I was back stateside for less than 48 hours when my phone started buzzing like it had been waiting for me to land. No welcome home. No are you safe? No small talk. Just my mother's name lighting up the screen while I was still unpacking a duffel bag that smelled like jet fuel and cheap detergent. I let it ring twice. Old habit. In the army, you learn not to jump every time something makes noise. "Hi, Mom," I said when I finally answered. "You sound tired," she said, flat and efficient like she was noting it for later. "Are you sick?" "I just got back. I'm fine." "Well, listen, I won't keep you. Your sister's situation has gotten tight and your father and I need to know what you're going to do." That was the opening. Straight to business. No warm-up, no context, just a problem handed to me like I'd been carrying it the whole time. "What situation?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Megan's loan," she said. "Her payments are due and with everything going on, we're short. We were counting on you." Counting on me. Interesting phrasing. How short, I asked. There was a pause. The kind where someone pretends to calculate even though the number has been rehearsed. "About 40,000, she said. "Maybe a little more." I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because the timing was perfect. I was standing in my kitchen, still in uniform pants. Microwave humming behind me, and my mother was casually asking for more than my first car, my first apartment deposit, and my first year of furniture combined. "That's not short," I said. "That's a lifestyle." She didn't like that. I could hear it in her breath. "Madeline, don't be dramatic. This is medical school. This is her future." I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes. "Mom, I just got back. I haven't even slept." "And Megan hasn't slept in years," she shot back. "She's doing real work, saving lives. Not whatever it is you do over there. Whatever it is you do." She'd been using that line since I enlisted. "I'm active duty," I said. "You know that?" Yes, she said. "We're proud. But this is different. She's building something permanent." There it was. The comparison sharp and automatic. Megan the investment. Me the side project. "I'm not paying her loans," I said. Silence. Not shock. Not confusion. Just the kind of pause people use when they think you're joking. "Excuse me," she said. I said no. Her voice hardened. "Madeline, that money was to pay your sister's debt. Not could help. Not would help. Was. Past tense. Decided. Allocated." I straightened up. "My money." "Well, obviously," she said, irritated that I was missing the point. "But family money." I pictured the family spreadsheet in her head, the one where Megan's name was highlighted and mine was just a note in the margin. "Ask Madeline later." "I don't have liquid cash like that," I said. That part was technically true. Most of my savings were parked where they were supposed to be boring and untouchable. "You're an officer," she said. "You make good money." "Your father said?" "My father." Of course he had opinions. "I make a living," I said. "I also have expenses." "Don't start acting like a victim," she snapped. "You chose this path." I almost smiled. They loved that sentence. You chose this. It was their favorite way to avoid responsibility. "I chose to serve," I said. "I didn't choose Megan's debt." She exhaled sharply. "I can't believe this. After everything we've done for you." That one came right on schedule. "Like what I asked. We supported you," she said. "We let you live at home before you left. We never stopped you." "Let me." "Never stopped me." Generous. "I have to go," I said. "I'm not having this conversation right now." "You can't just hang up," she said. "Your sister is counting on this." "I'm sure she is." I ended the call before she could say anything else. My phone buzzed immediately. A text from Megan. "Mom said you're refusing. Are you serious right now?" I didn't answer. Another text came in, this one from my father. "Call me. We need to talk about your responsibilities." Responsibilities, plural. I set the phone face down on the counter and finally took my boots off. My apartment was quiet in that unfamiliar way it always was after I got back. No noise, no orders, no one telling me where to be next. Just me, a half-unpacked bag, and the sound of my own thoughts. This wasn't new. The only new part was the number. Growing up, Megan had always been the plan. The future doctor. The one with the framed report cards and the family announcements. I was the practical one. The backup. When I enlisted, my parents told everyone I was figuring things out. I figured out plenty. I learned how to budget on a salary that didn't impress anyone at Thanksgiving. I learned how to save without telling people I had savings. I learned that if you send money home quietly, it becomes expected quickly and forgotten faster. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Megan. You don't understand how much pressure I'm under. Dad says you can handle this. Dad says. Always Dad says. I typed one sentence, then deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. There was nothing to say that wouldn't get twisted into something else. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up my calendar. Briefings, medical, paperwork, a JAG consult. I'd already scheduled for something unrelated. I added a note under it anyway. Family financial pressure. Ask questions. It felt almost boring to do it that way, which told me I was doing the right thing. I reheated the leftover soup I'd bought on the way home and ate it standing up. Outside traffic moved like nothing had happened. Somewhere across town, my parents were probably sitting at the table, annoyed that their plan had hit resistance sooner than expected. My phone buzzed again. I didn't check it. I wasn't angry yet. That would come later if it came at all. Right now I was just clear. Clear that this wasn't about helping. Clear that this wasn't temporary. Clear that if I gave in now, this would be my role forever. I rinsed the bowl, dried my hands, and picked up my phone at last. 3 missed calls. All family. I set it back down without responding and went to unpack the rest of my bag. Already moving forward in my head. Not rushing, not stalling, just taking inventory and deciding what mattered. I slid the phone into the drawer by the sink and pushed it closed with my knuckle like that would keep the noise contained. Then I sat at the small table by the window and opened the mail that had piled up while I was gone. Utility bill. Credit card statement. A flyer for a gym I'd never join. Normal things. The kind of quiet paperwork that reminded me why I liked living alone. My mother used to call this phase of my life temporary. She'd say it the way people say a bad haircut will grow out. Once Megan finishes school. Once things settle. Once you figure out what you're really doing. I figured it out a long time ago. At 17, Megan had a color-coded planner and a framed acceptance letter to a summer pre-med program. At 17, I had a part-time job and a list of recruiters' numbers folded into my wallet. When I told my parents I was talking to the Army, my mother blinked like I'd spoken another language. "Why would you do that?" she asked. Not angry, just confused. "You're smart." My father didn't look up from the newspaper. "It's a phase," he said. "She'll change her mind." I didn't. They threw Megan a party when she got into her first-choice college. Balloons a cake with her name piped in, frosting relatives flying in from out of state. When I left for basic training, my mother drove me to the airport and reminded me to call on Sundays. No photos, no cake. Just a quick hug and a warning to be careful. At family gatherings after that, Megan's milestones were announced like press releases. Exams passed. Research projects. Interviews. My updates came later if there was time. Madeline's still in, my mother would say. Doing her thing. Doing her thing sounded like I was selling handmade jewelry online. When Megan started med school, my parents downsized their house and told everyone it was a smart financial move. When I got promoted the first time, my father nodded and said, "That's good experience." Experience. Not success. Not stability. Just experience. I paid my own way through everything. Uniforms, moves, flights home when I bothered to come. When Megan needed help covering rent one summer, my mother called me. I wired the money and didn't mention it again. When my parents' car needed repairs, my father hinted. I paid the bill and kept quiet. It was easier that way. No debates. No speeches about fairness. Silence buys peace, at least for a while. I folded the mail and stacked it neatly, my hands moving on autopilot. That night I slept on top of the covers, boots by the door out of habit, and woke up before dawn with my jaw clenched. I went for a run in the dark, the cold air biting my lungs, my mind running ahead of my feet. Growing up, Megan was always introduced first. "This is our daughter Megan," my parents would say. "She's going to be a doctor." Then they'd turn to me. "And this is Madeline. Just Madeline." At one Thanksgiving, my aunt asked what I did. Before I could answer, my mother cut in. "She's in the Army. For now." The table laughed politely. Megan smiled into her wine glass. I learned early that correcting them only made things awkward. So I stopped. I checked my phone after the run. More messages. My father this time. You don't understand the pressure your sister is under. I understood pressure. I just understood it differently. When Megan complained about her workload, my parents listened like it was breaking news. When I mentioned 18-hour days, my mother said, "Well, that's what you signed up for." When Megan missed a family event because of exams, she was praised for her dedication. When I missed one because I couldn't get leave approved, my absence was noted. She could have tried harder. The rules were simple. Megan's sacrifices were noble. Mine were choices. I showered, dressed, and drove to the grocery store. In the cereal aisle, my phone buzzed again. Megan this time. You know I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. She hadn't asked. She'd assumed. I put the phone back in my pocket and finished shopping. The cashier asked if I wanted a receipt. I said yes. Another habit. Paper trails matter. On the drive home, I thought about the first time I realized I was never part of the plan. It was years ago at a family barbecue. Megan had just been accepted into a competitive program, and my father raised his glass. To Megan, he said, "All our hard work paying off?" People clapped. My mother wiped a tear. Someone asked about me. "Oh, Madeline's doing fine," my mother said quickly. "She's independent." Independent sounded like an excuse not to worry. That was the moment I stopped expecting anything else. Back in my apartment, I unpacked the last of my bag and hung my uniform carefully in the closet. I lined my shoes up by the door, straightened the cushions on the couch, and sat down with my laptop. I pulled up my bank accounts and scrolled, not because I didn't know what was there, but because seeing the numbers grounded me. Everything was in order. Boring, predictable, mine. Another message came in, this one longer, from my father. "Your mother is upset. Megan is panicking. We're family. This is what families do." Families. The word had weight when it suited them. I typed a response and erased it. Then another. Erased that too. I wasn't ready to engage. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew how these conversations went. They started with guilt and ended with me explaining myself to people who had already decided the outcome. I closed the laptop and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The fan hummed softly. My apartment was small, clean, and exactly the size I needed. No spare room for expectations that weren't mine. By mid-morning, I had a plan for the day that didn't include any of them. Errands, laundry, a quick check-in email to my unit. Normal life. I put the phone on silent and left it on the table face down the way I did during briefings. As I grabbed my keys, I thought about how often my parents had said Megan carried the family's future. It was always framed like a compliment. What they never acknowledged was what that made me. If her success was the future, then my role was obvious. I locked the door behind me and headed down the stairs, not angry, not hurt, just clear about where I stood and how long I'd been standing there. I tossed the grocery bags onto the counter and watched my phone light up again before I could even put the milk in the fridge. Same 3 names. Same order. It felt coordinated now, like they were taking turns tapping the glass to see when I'd crack. I didn't answer. I put the milk away, lined up the cans in the pantry, and wiped a small coffee spill off the counter. Busy hands, clear head. By noon, the messages had shifted tone. My mother's texts got longer, softer on the surface, sharper underneath. "We're just worried about you. You've always been so distant. This is a chance to show Megan you support her." Support. As if I hadn't been doing that quietly for years. My father followed with something more formal. "We need to sit down and talk this through like adults." That one always meant he thought he still had leverage. I took a breath and replied to him just once. "I'm not sending money. I'm available to talk later." The response came fast. "This isn't just about money, Madeline. This is about family." There it was again. Family used like a tool. A word that meant obligation when it benefited them and silence when it didn't. My phone buzzed again. Megan this time. "Do you have any idea what happens if I miss this payment?" I typed back, then stopped. I wasn't going to get pulled into a back and forth where every sentence became evidence against me. I set the phone down and started the laundry. The machines rattled to life, a low mechanical noise that drowned out everything else for a moment. I leaned against the wall and let it. Growing up, my parents never yelled much. They didn't have to. Disappointment did the job. the quiet kind that lingered in the room long after the conversation ended. That was their preferred weapon. Make you feel small without ever raising their voices. When that didn't work, they escalated. The call came while I was folding shirts. My father again. I answered this time. "Madeline," he said, already tense. "We need to be on the same page." "I told you," I said. "I'm not paying Megan's loans." "You're not listening," he said. "This isn't optional. We're talking about consequences." "Whose?" I asked. He paused just long enough to remind me he was choosing his words carefully. "There are things you don't see from where you're standing. Reputations. Relationships. People talk." "Are you threatening me?" I asked. "Don't be dramatic," he said quickly. "I'm saying choices ripple, especially in close-knit communities." I almost laughed. My parents' community was a cul-de-sac and a church committee. Mine was a chain of command that cared about performance reports and compliance. The overlap was non-existent. "My career isn't a rumor," I said. "It's documented." He sighed, the sound heavy with practiced frustration. "You've always been stubborn." "I've always been independent," I said. "There's a difference." He tried another angle. "Your mother hasn't been sleeping. Megan's anxiety is through the roof. Do you want that on your conscience?" There it was. The emotional handoff. If facts didn't work, guilt would. "I'm not responsible for Megan's debt," I said. "And I'm not responsible for managing everyone else's feelings about it." "You're her sister," he said. "That means something." "It doesn't mean blank checks," I said. The line went quiet. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. "We didn't raise you to turn your back on us." I looked at the pile of neatly folded clothes and thought about all the times I'd wired money without being asked, all the favors that went unmentioned because they didn't fit the story they liked to tell about me. "You raised me to take responsibility," I said. "I'm doing that." He hung up without saying goodbye. The silence afterward felt different, thicker, like the air before a storm. My phone lit up again, this time with a group message. "Megan and my mother together." That was new. "We're disappointed in you," my mother wrote. "This is tearing the family apart," Megan added. "I can't believe you do this to us." Do this to us. As if my refusal had created the problem instead of exposing it. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then turned the phone off completely. Not silent. Off. For the rest of the afternoon, I kept moving. Laundry finished. Floors vacuumed. Dishes done. I packed a small bag for the gym and drove there, music low, windows cracked. The weight room was mostly empty. I loaded the bar and focused on the numbers. Sets, reps, breathing. Halfway through, my phone buzzed in my locker. I ignored it until I was done. When I finally checked, there was a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was shaky now, wounded. "I don't recognize you," she said. "You used to care about this family." Used to, past tense. I deleted it without replaying. On the drive home, I realized something had shifted. The requests were no longer framed as help. They were framed as obedience. They weren't asking what I could do. They were telling me what I owed. That told me everything I needed to know. At home, I turned my phone back on. Missed calls stacked up like unanswered questions. I didn't return any of them. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up a blank document. I typed a header and started listing facts. Dates, amounts, words used, who said what. Not because I planned to confront anyone yet. Because when pressure ramps up, clarity matters. By early evening, a new message came through from my father, shorter than the rest. "We can't protect you from the fallout if you keep this up." Protect me. From what exactly? I leaned back in my chair and considered the sentence. It wasn't concern. It was control wrapped in concern-colored paper. The kind that works when you're still hoping for approval. I wasn't. I saved the document and closed the laptop. Dinner was simple. Protein, vegetables, nothing fancy. I ate standing at the counter again, the way I did when I didn't want to linger. As I rinsed the plate, I noticed my hands were steady. No shaking. No rush of adrenaline. Just a low, focused awareness that the situation had crossed a line. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was a coordinated push. Guilt from my mother. Pressure from my father. Panic from Megan. Each one playing their part. Each one expecting me to fold. I dried my hands and glanced at the drawer where I'd put my phone earlier. The thought crossed my mind to call someone outside the family. Not to vent. To get perspective. I opened my contacts and scrolled past familiar names until I found the one I was looking for. Then I paused, thumb hovering over the screen, weighing the choice the same way I weighed everything else that mattered. I didn't need to react. I needed to assess. I set the phone down, grabbed my notebook from the table, and added one more line under the list of facts. I flipped the notebook closed, slid it into my bag, and grabbed my keys without checking my phone again. The decision felt physical, like shifting weight before a lift. Once you commit, you don't wobble. The drive to base was quiet. Early afternoon traffic, nothing dramatic. I parked where I always did. Walked past the same concrete buildings, nodded at the same faces. Routine has a way of calming things down. It reminds you that not everything is chaos, just because your family decided to be. I signed in, dropped my bag at my desk, and pulled up my schedule. The JAG consult I'd added the day before was still there, sitting innocently between a briefing and a medical appointment. At the time, I'd flagged it as general financial questions. Now it felt like the smartest thing I'd done all week. When people hear JAG, they imagine courtrooms and uniforms and people getting yelled at. In reality, most of the work is preventative. Boundaries, compliance, making sure small problems don't turn into career-ending ones. That mattered to me. I walked down the hallway and knocked on the open door. Captain Morales looked up from her screen. "Madeline," she said. "Come in." I sat posture straight out of habit. She didn't waste time. "You mentioned family financial pressure," she said. "Tell me what's going on." I didn't dramatize it. I laid out facts. Who asked? What they asked for. How they phrased it. The exact sentence my mother used. Morales typed as I talked, nodding occasionally. "Have you given them money already?" she asked. "In the past," I said. "Not for this." "Are they threatening you?" she asked. "Indirectly," I said. "Reputation, fallout, that kind of thing." She leaned back slightly. "Okay, first thing, you are not obligated to take on anyone else's personal debt, family or not. Second, you need to keep everything documented. Calls, texts, voicemails. Don't delete anything." "I've started a log," I said. "Good," she said. "Third, do not co-sign anything. Do not verbally agree to anything. And if anyone implies they can impact your career, that becomes a separate issue." "I figured," I said. She studied me for a moment. "You're handling this the right way. But you need to separate emotion from exposure. Right now, your risk isn't money. It's distraction." That landed. Distraction was dangerous. "Anything else I should do?" I asked. "Get a full picture," she said. "Before you engage further, know what you're dealing with. Assumptions get people in trouble." I left her office feeling lighter, not because the situation was resolved, but because I had guardrails. Clear ones. Back at my desk, I sent one email. Short, professional. To a financial investigator I'd used once before for a routine background check tied to a housing allowance issue. I didn't give details. I asked for a standard public record review. Liens, judgments, recent loans, anything tied to my parents' names. No drama. Just data. The reply came quicker than I expected. "Can take a look. Give me 48 hours. That was fine. I wasn't in a rush. The rest of the afternoon passed normally. Meetings, emails, a briefing that ran long. At no point did anyone mention my family, which was comforting. My world outside that mess was still intact. When I got home, my phone was exactly where I'd left it. I turned it on and let the messages load. I didn't read them right away. I cooked dinner first. Real food this time. Sat down, ate slowly. Only then did I check. More of the same. My mother alternating between concern and accusation. Megan escalating. My father going quiet, which was new. One message from Megan stood out. "If this blows up, it's on you." I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the entire thread to a separate folder and labeled it clearly. Dates, names, no emotion, just record keeping. Later that evening, my father finally called again. I let it go to voicemail. This time I listened. His voice was controlled, too controlled. "We need to meet," he said. "In person. There are details you don't understand. I can explain everything." Explain everything. That usually meant justify. I replayed the message once more, then saved it. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm and went for another run. My legs felt strong. The rhythm steadied my thoughts. By the time I got back, my phone buzzed with an email notification. Preliminary findings attached. The subject line read. I didn't open it right away. I showered, dressed, made coffee. No rushing. Whatever was in that file had been there yesterday too. Panic wouldn't change it. I sat at the table and opened the attachment. The first page listed my parents' names, address. Then the numbers started. 2 recent personal loans. 1 private, 1 bank issued. High interest, not small. A line of credit tied to their home. Recently increased. A note about a refinance within the last 18 months. I exhaled slowly. The second page mentioned co-signers. Megan's name appeared more than once. I scrolled. Total outstanding debt was significantly higher than what my mother had mentioned. Not $40,000. Not even close. The payment they were scrambling for wasn't tuition. It was interest. Penalties. Catch-up. This wasn't a temporary crunch. This was structural. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the wall. The pieces rearranged themselves quickly once the numbers were on the table. The urgency, the coordinated pressure, the shift from asking to demanding. They weren't asking for help. They were trying to stop a collapse. Another line caught my eye. A note about my father's professional license. A minor action years ago. Not catastrophic, but enough to limit options. Enough to explain why credit had gotten expensive. I closed the file and sat there, coffee cooling in my hand. The phone rang. My father again. This time I answered. We should talk, he said immediately. Face to face. I've seen the numbers, I said. Silence. Real silence this time. I don't know what you think you've seen, he said carefully. I think you're in deeper than you admitted, I said. And I think you expected me to fix it. That's not fair, he said. It's accurate, I said. His tone shifted. This is bigger than you realize. I realize enough, I said. If you want to meet, we can meet. But not to pressure me. Another pause. When he asked, I checked my calendar. Friday afternoon, I said. My terms. He agreed too quickly. After the call ended, I reopened the document on my laptop and added a few more lines. Loan amounts. Dates. Megan's name highlighted. My father's license note attached as a reference, not a weapon. This wasn't about winning an argument. It was about not being pulled into someone else's freefall. I closed the laptop, finished my coffee, and headed out the door. Already adjusting my schedule in my head, not bracing for impact, just moving pieces into place where they belonged. I printed the report and slid the pages into a plain folder, the kind you can buy in bulk for office use. No labels, no drama, just paper and facts. Then I tucked it into my bag and headed out the door, locking behind me with the same soft click it always made. By mid-morning, the messages started again. My mother first. We need to talk before this gets out of hand. Out of hand implied loss of control, not concern. I didn't answer. I stopped at a coffee shop near base, ordered the same thing I always did, and took a seat by the window. I reread the report line by line, slower this time. Loan origination dates. Interest rates. The refinance that lined up perfectly with the year Megan started her residency interviews. None of it was accidental. The most telling detail wasn't the total amount. It was the structure. Short-term loans stacked on top of long-term debt. Interest rolled forward. Minimum payments barely touching principal. This wasn't a bridge. It was a sinkhole. My phone buzzed again. Megan, Dad says you're digging into things that don't concern you, I almost replied. Almost. Instead, I flipped to the page where her name appeared as co-signer and underlined it once with my pen. Clean, straight, no emotion. I finished my coffee and drove to work. The day moved fast, as days tend to do when you're busy and not interested in distractions. A meeting ran long. A shipment issue needed sign-off. Someone asked me about leave schedules for next quarter. Normal problems. At lunch, I sat alone and ate, scrolling through my notes. One detail kept pulling my attention back. The refinance. It wasn't just to cover tuition. It was to cover gaps. Gaps created by something else failing quietly in the background. I pulled up my father's professional profile. Nothing flashy. Years in the same field. A few articles. Then I searched deeper. Public records aren't hard to find if you know where to look. A brief notation from years ago surfaced. A regulatory action. Not disbarment, not criminal, but enough to shrink income and close doors. That explained the timing. The debt wasn't just Megan's. She was the justification. The story they told themselves to make the risk feel noble. When I got home that evening, my father called again. I let it ring once, then answered. "I'm looking at your loans," I said before he could start. "You shouldn't be doing that," he said. "They're public," I said. "And you involved me when you asked for my money." His breath caught. Just slightly. "This isn't what it looks like," he said. "It looks like you refinanced the house," I said. "Took on high-interest loans. Used Megan's future income as leverage. And now you're short." He didn't deny it. He shifted tactics. "We did what we had to do," he said. "We invested in her." "At my expense," I said. "No," he said quickly. "For the family." "For her," I said. "Don't split hairs," he snapped. I leaned against the counter and listened. He was talking now faster, explaining justifying listing reasons. Markets, timing, bad luck, temporary setbacks. He talked the way people do when they've been rehearsing a defense not telling the truth. "You didn't tell me the number," I said. "We didn't want to worry you," he said. "You told me 40,000, I said. "It's much more than that." Silence again. He was quieter when he came back. "We thought you'd understand. Understand what I asked. That you expected me to cover the difference." "We expected you to help," he said. "Like you always do." There it was. Not hope. Expectation. "I'm not a line item," I said. "You're her sister," he said. "I'm not her lender," I said. His voice tightened. "If you don't step in, things get ugly." "Ugly for who?" I asked. "For all of us," he said. "Including you." I let that hang for a second. "My finances are separate," I said. "My career is separate. Your debt doesn't cross over unless I let it." "You're being cold," he said. "I'm being accurate," I said. He tried one last angle. "Your mother is barely holding it together." "I'm not responsible for managing Mom's anxiety," I said. He exhaled hard. "We didn't raise you to be like this." "You raised me to read contracts," I said, "and to know when something doesn't add up." He ended the call without another word. I set the phone down and opened my folder again, spreading the pages across the table. For the first time, I looked at the total without flinching. If I paid it, I'd be tied to it. If I co-signed anything, I'd be trapped. If I gave even part of it, they'd be back. That was the pattern. Help became obligation. Obligation became expectation. Expectation became resentment. I thought about Megan, about how she'd always assumed things would work out because they usually did, about how my parents smoothed her path while telling me mine was character building, about the texts accusing me of betrayal when I said no. This wasn't about survival. It was about preserving a hierarchy. Later that night, Megan called. I let it go to voicemail. I listened once. "You're making this so much worse," she said, voice tight with panic. "Dad says you're blowing this out of proportion. If you cared about me at all, you'd fix this. Fix this. Not help. Fix." I deleted the message and added another note to my document. Language matters. By the next morning, I had a clearer picture than any of them probably realized. The debt wasn't going away with a single payment. The pressure wouldn't ease if I gave in. It would escalate. That was how these situations worked. Once you signal that you'll absorb consequences, you inherit them. At work, I kept my focus narrow. Tasks, decisions, checklists. The clarity felt steady, almost calming. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was alert. In the afternoon, my father texted, "Friday still works, my office." I replied with one word, confirmed. I closed my phone and went back to what I was doing, already thinking through what mattered, what didn't, and how quickly a family crisis stops feeling personal once you see it for what it is. I parked across the street from my father's office and sat for a moment with the engine off, hands resting on the wheel. The building looked the same as it always had. Neutral, brick-tinted windows, a sign that still listed services he no longer advertised. I adjusted the strap of my bag, stepped out, and locked the car without checking my phone. Inside, the receptionist recognized me immediately. She always had. I signed in and took a seat, flipping through a magazine I had no intention of reading. When my father appeared in the doorway, he smiled like we were meeting for lunch. "Madeline," he said, holding the door open. "Come on back." His office hadn't changed either. Same desk, same framed certificates, Same family photos lined up along the shelf, Megan's white coat picture front and center. He gestured for me to sit, then closed the door behind us. "I'm glad you came," he said, settling into his chair. "This has all gotten blown out of proportion." I set my bag on the floor and sat posture straight. "You asked to meet." "Yes," he said, "so we can clear the air." He leaned forward, hands folded. "Your mother is upset. Megan is under immense stress. We're all carrying a lot right now." "I've seen the numbers," I said. His expression flickered. "Numbers can be misleading. Dates aren't," I said. "Neither are signatures." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "You always jump to conclusions." He shifted, annoyance creeping in. "You don't understand how these things work." "I understand debt," I said. "I understand interest. I understand what happens when you stack short-term loans on top of a mortgage." "That was a strategic decision," he said. "For Megan," I said. "For the family," he corrected. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder, placing it on the desk between us. I didn't slide it toward him. I didn't need to. "You refinanced the house," I said. "You took private loans at high interest. You used Megan as a co-signer, and you expected me to cover the gap." He leaned back. "Expected is a strong word." "Counted on," I said. He didn't argue that. "Madeline," he said, softening his tone, "you've always been capable. You can handle things. Megan is stretched thin. This was never about favoritism." "It's always been about favoritism," I said. He waved a hand dismissively. "You're reading emotion into a financial situation." "No," I said. "I'm reading behavior." He straightened. "Let's be practical. We create a family fund. You contribute. I manage it. We stabilize Megan's situation, then reassess." There it was. Clean, direct, no guilt, no stories, just control. "I'm not doing that," I said. His jaw tightened. "You didn't even let me finish." "I don't need to," I said. "I know what you're asking." "You're shutting this down without considering the long-term benefits," he said. "For who?" I asked. "For all of us," he said. "Megan's earning potential alone is not my collateral," I said. His voice rose. "You're being unreasonable." "I'm being clear," I said. He leaned forward again, dropping the pretense. "You have the means. You're choosing not to help." "I'm choosing not to be absorbed into your debt," I said. He stared at me, eyes sharp. "Do you know what happens if we default?" "I know what happens if I co-sign," I said. "It becomes my problem forever." "We raised you," he snapped. "You raised Megan," I said. "You prepared me to be self-sufficient." His face flushed. "That's not fair." "It's accurate," I said. He stood abruptly, pacing behind the desk. "You think you're above this because you wear a uniform. I think I've earned the right to say no," I said. He stopped pacing and faced me. "You're isolating yourself." "I'm setting boundaries," I said. "You're burning bridges," he said. "I'm stepping off them," I said. The room went quiet. His phone buzzed on the desk. He ignored it. "Let me be blunt," he said finally. "If you don't step in, we lose the house." I didn't react. I waited. "And Megan's credit is already strained," he added. "Her future could be compromised." "That was a choice," I said. "Several choices." He slammed his hand on the desk. "You think you're so disciplined, so controlled. This isn't a mission you can plan your way out of." "I'm not planning to fix it," I said. "You're willing to let us fail," he said. "I'm unwilling to let myself be pulled under," I said. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. "This isn't who you used to be. This is who I've always been," I said. "You just didn't need it before." He shook his head. "You don't understand loyalty." "I understand consent," I said. He laughed once, bitter. "You've locked everything down, haven't you?" I didn't answer that. "You've protected your assets," he continued. "Structured things so you can't be touched." "I've planned responsibly," I said. His eyes narrowed. "You went around me. You dismissed my career for years," I said. "You don't get to manage my finances now." He leaned back in his chair, suddenly tired. "If you walk away from this, don't expect us to cover for you." "Cover for me?" how I asked. He hesitated. "Just enough." "My record is clean," I said. "My work speaks for itself." He looked at the folder again, then away. "You're making a mistake." "I'm correcting one," I said. I stood, picked up my bag, and turned toward the door. "Madeline," he said, voice lower now. "If this comes out, it won't be pretty." "It already is," I said. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The receptionist looked up, her expression neutral. I nodded once and walked past her without slowing. Outside, the air felt cooler. I crossed the street and got into my car, closing the door with a solid thud. I didn't start the engine right away. I sat there hands steady, replaying the conversation without emotion. He hadn't denied anything. He hadn't apologized. He hadn't asked. He'd negotiated, pressured, threatened, then warned. That told me everything. I started the car, merged into traffic, and drove back toward my side of town, already sorting through what stayed internal and what needed to be acted on, not as a reaction, but as a decision I'd been moving toward for longer than I realized. I stopped at a red light 2 blocks from my apartment and watched a man help his kid wrestle a bike into the back of an SUV. The kid laughed when the wheel slipped and smacked the bumper. The dad didn't yell. He adjusted the angle and tried again. It was a small thing, but it stuck with me longer than it should have. When I got home, I didn't sit down. I dropped my bag by the door, poured a glass of water, and drank it standing up. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up a different folder than the one I'd been living in all week. Ethan, my younger brother, didn't text much. He never had. If Megan sent paragraphs, Ethan sent 1 sentence. If my parents called repeatedly, Ethan waited and asked if I was busy first. He graduated without drama. No speeches, no expectations. He'd taken a job across town, entry-level steady, nothing flashy. The kind of start no one made a cake for. I scrolled through our last messages. A thank you for a birthday card. A quick update about his job orientation. A question about whether the used couch he found was a good deal. He never asked for help. That wasn't pride. It was conditioning. Growing up, Ethan learned early that attention was a limited resource. Megan used most of it. I took what was left until I stopped asking. I opened a real estate app and filtered by distance to Ethan's work. I wasn't looking for anything impressive. I was looking for solid. 1 bedroom. Quiet street. Nothing that screamed investment property. Somewhere you could come home and not feel like you owed anyone an explanation. I bookmarked 3 places and closed the app. No rush. The next morning, Ethan texted me. Dad said you stopped by his office. Everything okay? I stared at the screen for a second, then replied, I'm good. Just handling some things. He didn't press. He never did. At work, I stayed focused. Meetings, checklists, deadlines. The conversation with my father replayed once or twice, but without heat. Just information. He'd made his position clear. So had I. During lunch, I called a realtor a friend had recommended years ago. Straightforward guy. Efficient. No small talk. I'm looking to buy, I said. Nothing fancy. Close fast. Cash or financing, he asked. Cash, I said. He paused, then said, Okay. What's your timeline? Soon, I said. But not rushed. That mattered. I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. By the end of the week, I'd toured 2 of the places I bookmarked. One was too noisy. The other felt right the moment I stepped inside. Clean lines. Good light. A kitchen that didn't feel apologetic. It was priced reasonably, not low, not inflated. The kind of place someone could settle into without feeling like they were waiting for the next thing. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Megan. I didn't even tell Ethan. The paperwork moved smoothly. No drama. No last-minute surprises. I reviewed everything twice then, once more, just to be sure. When the final number hit my screen, I didn't flinch. I'd known it was coming. The money left my account without ceremony. No fanfare. No announcement. Just a confirmation email and a receipt. That night, my mother called again. I let it go to voicemail. We're running out of time, she said, voice tight. Your father is furious. Megan is barely holding it together. I don't understand how you can be so calm. Calm wasn't the word. Clear was. I didn't call back. Instead, I checked my calendar. Ethan's graduation dinner was coming up. A restaurant my parents picked, of course. Nice enough to impress, not nice enough to feel extravagant. They liked places where they could be seen without overcommitting. I added a note next to the date. Simple. 2 words. Bring folder. The week rolled on. My parents alternated between silence and urgency. Megan sent one message that read like an accusation disguised as concern. You're really going to let this ruin everything. Everything. Defined narrowly, apparently. Ethan texted me again on Thursday. Mom says things are tense. Just wanted to make sure you're okay. I smiled at that. Not because it was funny, but because it was him. I replied, I'm okay. Proud of you. He sent back a thumbs up. That was it. Friday afternoon, I picked up the keys and the final paperwork. The realtor handed me a slim envelope and congratulated me like it was something personal. I thanked him and asked one practical question about utilities. Then I left. I didn't drive to the new place. There was no need. It wasn't mine to christen. That evening, I laid everything out on my kitchen table. Deed. Receipts. A card I bought on the way home. Blank. I stared at it for a moment, then wrote something simple inside. No speech, no explanation, just enough. I slept well that night. The next morning, my father sent one final text before the dinner. We need to resolve this before tonight. I read it once, then set the phone face down. By early evening, I was dressed and ready. Nothing dramatic. Clean lines, comfortable shoes. I slid the envelope into my bag and checked it twice more out of habit than doubt. As I locked the door behind me, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Megan. You're really doing this. I didn't answer. I walked to my car, started the engine, and pulled into traffic. The envelope steady in my bag, the route familiar. My mind already quiet. Not bracing for impact, just following through on a decision that had been forming long before anyone asked me for anything. I parked a block away from the restaurant and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, not for nerves, just for details. Hair in place, jacket smooth, bag zipped. The envelope was where it should be, flat against the inside pocket like it belonged there. I stepped out of the car and felt the early evening air settle on my skin, cool enough to wake you up without making a point of it. The restaurant was already busy. Valet out front. Soft music leaking through the doors. The kind of place my parents liked because it looked celebratory without being risky. I walked in, gave my name to the host, and followed him past tables filled with people who were clearly not about to have their lives rearranged. My family was already there. My mother spotted me first and smiled too quickly, the way she did when she wanted something to feel normal. My father stood to greet me, his expression tight but controlled. Megan sat beside him, posture rigid, eyes tracking every movement I made like I might trip and give her a reason to exhale. Ethan stood up last. He looked good. Tired in the way new graduates get tired, but lighter than I'd seen him in years. Hey, he said, pulling me into a quick hug. Hey, I said back. You ready for this? He laughed once. As ready as I'll ever be. We sat. Menus opened. Water poured. Small talk filled the gaps. My mother commented on the drive. My father asked about work carefully, like he was avoiding a subject that might detonate. Megan scrolled on her phone, then put it face down when she noticed me watching. So my mother said, leaning forward slightly, "This is a big night." For Ethan, I said. Yes, she said quickly. For all of us. There it was again. The collective ownership of someone else's achievement. Ethan shifted in his seat, uncomfortable. It's just dinner, he said. You didn't have to make it a thing. My mother waved him off. Graduations matter. Milestones matter. She didn't look at me when she said it. The waiter arrived. Orders were taken. Megan ordered the most expensive thing on the menu without hesitation. Ethan ordered something simple and apologized to the waiter when he changed his mind. My father cleared his throat. Before the food comes, he said, I just want to say how proud we are. He raised his glass eyes on Ethan. You worked hard. You stayed focused. We're excited to see what you do next. We clinked glasses. Ethan smiled, genuinely pleased. My mother dabbed at the corner of her eye. Megan leaned over and whispered something to her. My mother nodded. The tension didn't spike. It stretched, like a rubber band pulled slowly, deliberately. As the conversation drifted, my phone buzzed in my bag. I didn't check it. I knew who it would be. I kept my hands on the table. My posture relaxed, my breathing even. So Madeline, my father said, eventually you still happy with everything? Yes, I said. He waited, clearly expecting more. When it didn't come, he shifted. Work going well. It is, I said. My mother jumped in. She's always been so independent. Always. Past and present. A trait, not an achievement. Megan finally looked up. You don't talk much about what you do, she said. It's hard to keep track. I don't need updates, I said. I manage my own calendar. She frowned, then smiled thinly. Must be nice. The waiter brought bread. Plates clinked. The noise of the room rose and fell around us. From the outside, we probably looked like any other family celebrating something good. Inside the table, everything was carefully contained. My father leaned back and folded his hands. "We should talk logistics," he said casually. My mother shot him a look. He ignored it. "Logistics of what?" I asked. "Next steps," he said. "Transitions. Planning." "For Ethan," I said. He hesitated. "For everyone." Ethan stiffened. "I'm good," he said. "I start Monday. I've got housing lined up for now." "For now," my mother echoed. "You don't want to rush into anything." "I'm not," Ethan said. "I found a place close to work." "Temporary," my father said. "Until you're settled." I watched Ethan's jaw tighten. I reached for my water and took a sip, letting the silence do its work. Megan sighed. "Can we not do this here?" "Do what my father asked." "Pretend everything's fine," she said, eyes flicking to me. "When it's not?" My mother's voice sharpened. "This is not the time." "When is?" Megan asked. "Because it feels like we're running out." There it was, the crack. My father looked at me. "We talked about this." "Yes," I said, "we did." "And my mother asked?" "And nothing changed," I said. Her face tightened. "You can't be serious." "I am," I said. Ethan looked between us. "What's going on?" My father exhaled. "It's complicated." "It doesn't sound complicated," Ethan said. "It sounds tense." Megan pushed her chair back slightly. "She's refusing to help," she said, pointing at me. "That's what's going on," my mother gasped. "Megan." "It's true," Megan said. "She has the money. She just won't use it." The room felt quieter, or maybe my focus narrowed. I set my glass down carefully. "Use it for what Ethan asked." My father spoke before I could. "This isn't something we need to unpack tonight." "Why not?" Ethan said. "It's my dinner." My mother reached for his arm. "Sweetheart, just enjoy the evening." Megan laughed once sharp. "Must be nice to enjoy things." I met her eyes. "You're free to explain your version," I said. "I'll stick to facts." My father stiffened. "Enough." "Then stop circling," I said. The waiter appeared with entrees, hesitated, then set the plates down like he was stepping into a weather system he didn't understand. No one thanked him. Ethan looked at me, confusion turning to concern. "Stalen." I reached into my bag, not dramatically, not quickly, just deliberately. I pulled out the envelope and set it on the table closer to Ethan than anyone else. "This is for you," I said. He blinked. "What is it?" "Open it," I said. My mother's breath caught. "What are you doing?" "Handling logistics," I said. Ethan slid a finger under the flap and pulled out the papers, his brow furrowing as he scanned the first page. He looked up, then back down, then up again. "Is this?" He stopped. "Is this real?" "It is," I said. My father surged forward. "That money was to pay your sister's debt." The words hit the table like a dropped plate, loud and unmistakable, heads at nearby tables turning. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move the envelope. I just watched Ethan as the meaning landed, his expression shifting from surprise to something steadier. Something grounded as the noise around us continued and the truth settled into the open space between us. The room didn't go silent all at once. It thinned like someone slowly turning down a dimmer. Forks paused midair. A couple at the next table pretended not to listen and failed. The waiter hovered, then backed away. Ethan looked at my father, then at me, then back at the papers in his hands. He read the first page again, slower this time, his lips moving without sound. "For her loans," he said, "not loud, just clear." My mother's chair scraped as she shifted. "Richard," she said, sharp. "Not here." "You don't get to decide the setting," I said. "You pick the restaurant." My father's face had gone red, not embarrassed, angry. "You knew exactly what you were doing." "I did," I said. Megan pushed her plate away. "This is insane," she said. "You can't just—" "Buy a house," I asked. "I can." "You're stealing from the family," she said. Ethan looked up. "Stealing," my father answered before anyone else could. "That money was earmarked," he said. "For Megan's obligations." "Earmarked by who?" Ethan asked. My mother reached for his arm again. He pulled back gently but firmly. "By us," my father said. "We made plans." "With my money," I said. My mother finally lost her careful tone. "We didn't think you'd be selfish." There it was. The word they kept loaded and ready. Ethan stared at her. "Selfish how?" "For refusing to help your sister," Megan said. "When she needs it." Ethan's eyes flicked to me. "Is that true?" "I refuse to pay debt I didn't create," I said. My father slammed his palm on the table. Glasses rattled. "You're undermining us in public." "You made it public," I said. "You yelled." Megan laughed brittle. Don't pretend this is noble. You wanted attention. I shook my head. I wanted to be done. Ethan lowered the papers to the table. So let me understand, he said. You wanted her to pay your loans. Yes, Megan said. Because it's temporary. It's not, I said. It's compounding. My father shot me a look. You don't need to explain interest rates. I do, I said. Because you didn't. My mother leaned in, voice trembling now. We're drowning. You thought I'd save you, I said quietly. That's what families do, she said. That's what you taught me not to do, I said. You taught me to plan. Ethan rubbed his face with both hands, processing. So the dinner, the logistics talk, that was about this? My father didn't answer. That's messed up, Ethan said the words flat, not emotional. This was supposed to be my night. My mother looked stricken. It still is. No, Ethan said. It isn't. He picked up the envelope again, flipping through the pages. You bought this outright? Yes, I said. For me, he said. Yes. Megan scoffed. Must be nice. It is, I said. That's why I did it. My father stood. You're not thinking about consequences. I am, I said. I chose them. He leaned over the table, voice low and dangerous. You've put us in an impossible position. You put yourselves there, I said. I didn't sign anything. My mother's eyes filled. After everything. Stop, Ethan said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Just stop. They froze. That was new. I didn't know any of this, he said. And you were going to let me sit here and smile while you tried to corner her. We weren't cornering, my father said. You were, Ethan said. I can hear it now. Megan stood. This is humiliating. Sit down, my father snapped. She didn't. I reached into my bag and slid one more sheet onto the table, angled toward Ethan. Utility setup, I said. Keys are with the agent. Move-in dates flexible. Ethan swallowed. Madeline, read it later, I said. Eat. My mother's voice broke. You're tearing us apart. No, I said. I'm stepping out. My father pointed at the papers. You expect us to just accept this? I expect you to accept that I'm not paying her debt, I said. Megan laughed again, louder. You think this ends here? I think it ends with me not wiring money, I said. The waiter returned, tentative. Is everything okay? Yes, I said. We're celebrating. My father barked a humorless laugh. Celebrating betrayal. Ethan pushed his chair back and stood. I need air. I'll go with you, I said. My mother reached for him. Ethan, please. He shook his head. Not right now. We walked out together, the door closing behind us with a soft thud that felt louder than it should have. Outside, the night air was cooler, steady. Cars passed. Someone laughed down the block. Ethan leaned against the wall and stared at the sidewalk. I didn't know, he said. I swear I didn't. I know, I said. They were going to use you, he said. They tried, I said. He looked at me, eyes wet but focused. Why me? I shrugged. Because you didn't ask. He let out a shaky breath. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I said. Just live there. Inside, raised voices leaked through the glass. My father, then Megan, then my mother. A trio that had always filled rooms without noticing who they drowned out. Ethan straightened. I can't go back in. You don't have to, I said. He nodded, clutching the envelope. I'll call you. Anytime, I said. He walked toward his car. Steps uneven at first, then steadier. I stayed where I was, listening to the muffled noise inside, not tense, not triumphant, just aware that something fundamental had shifted and that no amount of shouting could put it back where it had been. I drove home alone, windows cracked, radio off. The streets were busy in the way they always were on a Friday night, people heading somewhere, laughing at crosswalks, not knowing a family had just split along a fault line a few miles away. I parked in my usual spot, grabbed my bag, and went upstairs without checking my phone. Inside the apartment felt exactly the same as it had that morning. No dramatic shift in the air. No sense of collapse. I set my keys on the counter, poured a glass of water, and sat down at the table. The chair didn't wobble. The floor didn't creak. Life apparently was uninterested in making a scene. My phone buzzed a few minutes later. A text from my mother. How could you do this to us? I didn't reply. Another buzz. Megan this time. You ruined everything. I hope you're happy. I turned the phone face down. That night I slept straight through. No dreams. No replay loops. Just rest. The fallout didn't come all at once. It never does. It came in pieces spaced out enough to be digestible. A voicemail from my father 2 days later, calmer clipped asking if we could reset the conversation. An email from my mother a week after that, heavy with guilt and selective memory. A message from Megan that oscillated between anger and panic depending on the day. I responded to none of it. Ethan moved into the house the following weekend. I helped him set up utilities and forwarded him the contact information he needed. We didn't talk much about the dinner. We didn't need to. He sent me a photo of the empty living room with a single folding chair in the middle and wrote, "Feels unreal." I replied, "You'll get used to it." Over the next few months, the situation my parents had been trying to outrun caught up with them. Not catastrophically, not in a single headline moment, but steadily. Payments missed. Options narrowing. The house went on the market quietly, the listing phrased like a strategic downsizing. Megan's credit took a hit. Opportunities she'd assumed would be there suddenly required explanations she wasn't prepared to give. My father stopped calling. My mother tried a different approach. One afternoon, she left a voicemail that sounded tired instead of angry. "Your father isn't well," she said. "Stress does things to people. Families are supposed to show grace." Grace. Another word that only ever flowed in one direction. I deleted the message and went back to what I was doing. At work, nothing changed. Or rather, everything stayed consistent, which mattered more. My evaluations were solid. My promotion packet moved forward on schedule. No whispers. No fallout. My father's implied leverage turned out to be exactly what I thought it was, nothing. I didn't feel victorious. I felt aligned. One evening, Ethan came by with takeout and a mismatched set of plates he'd found at a thrift store. We ate on the floor, backs against the couch he'd finally bought. "They've been calling me," he said between bites. I nodded. I figured. "I told them I'm not getting involved," he said. "That whatever they need to say to you, they should say to you." "That's fair," I said. "They asked if you were coming around," he added. I looked at the wall for a moment. "Not right now." He didn't argue. He just nodded and changed the subject, asking about a project at work. That was his way. He didn't demand loyalty. He respected distance. I realized then that this was the difference. Megan took up space. Ethan made room. Weeks passed. Then months. The sharp edges dulled. Not because anything was resolved, but because I stopped engaging with it. Boundaries, it turned out, worked better when you didn't announce them every day. My parents eventually stopped framing their messages as emergencies. They shifted to nostalgia, old photos, childhood stories, attempts to remind me of a version of us that had never really existed the way they remembered it. I didn't bite. Megan sent one final message that summer. "I hope you know this didn't have to be this way." I read it once, then archived it. She was right in a sense. It didn't have to be that way. But it also didn't have to be the way it had been. On a quiet Sunday morning, I visited Ethan's place for the first time since he'd settled in. The house smelled like fresh paint and coffee. He'd hung one framed poster in the living room and left the rest of the walls bare. "I like it like this for now," he said. "Gives me space to think." "Good," I said. We stood in the kitchen, leaning against opposite counters, talking about nothing important. Weather, work, the neighbor who played music too loud. Normal things. The kind of conversation you can only have when no one is keeping score. As I drove home, I thought about how often revenge gets portrayed as loud, confrontational, final. What I'd done didn't feel like revenge in that sense. It felt more like refusing to continue a bad contract. I didn't cut my family off in a blaze of glory. I didn't expose them publicly. I didn't lecture them about fairness. I just stopped funding a system that depended on my silence. At base the following week, I signed paperwork for my next assignment. Routine. Predictable. Earned. I caught my reflection in the glass as I walked out of the office and barely recognized the version of myself that used to wait for permission to say no. That night, I sat on my balcony with a book I wasn't really reading, watching the lights come on across the city. My phone stayed inside untouched. No notifications, no demands. I thought about the dinner again, not with anger, but with clarity. About the moment my father shouted. About the way the truth slipped out when he lost control. About how everything after that had simply followed gravity. I hadn't taken anything from them. I'd chosen where my money went. I'd chosen who I supported. I'd chosen to step out of a role I never agreed to play. That was the part no one ever seems to warn you about. Once you stop carrying what isn't yours, things don't fall apart. They just settle into their real shape. I didn't walk away from my family because I hated them. I walked away because I finally understood the difference between helping and being used. For a long time, I confused loyalty with silence and responsibility with sacrifice. But family revenge stories aren't always about yelling or cutting people off. Sometimes family drama ends the moment you stop letting others decide your worth. Choosing my brother didn't make me cruel. It made me honest. And choosing myself didn't destroy my family. It just exposed what was already broken. If you're drawn to real revenge stories, especially family revenge stories, rooted in real-life boundaries and hard choices, make sure to subscribe to the channel. These stories aren't about fantasy payback. They're about truth accountability and what happens when someone finally says no and means it.